Today, we are going to start off with my girl T Swift to talk a little bit about infographics. I know blown up on the screen, this graphic looks a little blurry, but it still illustrates my point of why you would use an infographic, which is basically to deliver information to your audience in a graphic form, because otherwise the information written in paragraphs would be really boring and cumbersome to read. And so broken down into graphics, it's more bite-sized, digestible parts. As you can see here, this information, everybody Taylor Swift dated from 2004 to 2013, quite a few, would be a lot of reading in paragraph style. And here you can kind of enter the infographic wherever you would like. If you want to go chronologically from 2004 to 2013, then you can choose to read it that way, or you can jump in at any point and digest the information as you want. So that is just to say that Taylor dated a lot and she was young, and that's okay. But also to say that this is kind of the purpose why we teach infographics, and they're becoming more and more and more popular because people want their information quickly. In a different lesson, I talked about design and typography and fonts and color. So I'm not going to say too much about it here, except to just say you want to keep your fonts limited, meaning no more than 2 to 3. And you want to think about contrast. So we always say thick, thin, or bold, unbold. And then you want to think about your headline font being larger, and you want to make sure, as you learned in the previous lesson, that you use a serif font, meaning a font that has feet on it when you're going to use a lot of text. And then you can use a sans serif font or a font without feet for headlines and big headings and things like that. Because if the words don't have the feet on it, it becomes very hard to read in lines of text. All right, so information that you might be boiling down into a graphic can vary. For this assignment, I'm going to say the biggest thing is that whatever you pitch for your infographic should be something that would be of interest to our audience, right? So it's similar to having the news values that we talked about. It's local to our community. It's a timely topic or a topic of human interest related to something that our audience would be interested in. It could be just factual information. It can be something kind of fun, like you see in magazines, what your band t-shirt says about you. It could be something that you kind of make up tongue in cheek, or it can be something that you have done true research on. If you do research, then you need to cite where you got the information from. I'm just kind of scrolling through the graphics so you can get an idea. There's so many. If you just search infographics, you can get so many. But I just want you to see all of the different ways that you can put together a graphic. Notice here that it is all words and numbers put into the shape of a picture, right? That represents what the graphic is about. Here you can see we have a nice large headline and then a little bit of chatter to tell us what the infographic is about. That is key, right? And then you want to label your headings. Again, keep your spacing nice and consistent. Keep all of your shapes the same size. Simple is better, okay? Fun infographic on the psychology of color, because color is a big part of design. One very popular way that we use infographics is in our yearbook. And so we call them in our yearbook, we call them mods or yearbook modules. And so if this is something that you are interested in doing, you can certainly do something like this too, where you would see in our yearbook, it's usually like a horizontal or a vertical box filled with information. Here we have a cutout photograph, which needs to be grounded so she's not floating as a runner. And then a nice headline and nice clear serif font. Here's another one on the bottom right, a graphic from a past yearbook in 2018 where we used some photographs to make sort of a bar graph with information about the graduates. Here's a track infographic without cutting out the photos and kind of using quotes from the students. This was a great sort of a checkbox infographic. You know you're a true Highlander when you have, and then you can kind of check off all of the things that you have done while in high school. That's a fun one. Here's, again, just another typical either senior magazine or yearbook type module. This is another great graphic, senior statistics. And this is what I want to mention. So if you are going to do a survey of people, you need to say the number of people you asked. And you need to be upfront, because to give a percentage out of 300 students versus 10 students is a little bit different. So you need to be upfront. The best sample size when you're doing a survey is about 10% of the total population. Here they were focusing on the whole population of seniors, but in a school, let's say, of 1,000 students, you would want to get 100 responses for it to be statistically significant. Okay, so something to keep in mind when you're doing survey type work. You want to be very careful with the questions that you're asking and what results those are going to yield. And then you have to be very upfront with where your information came from. Probably the most popular infographic that we do are these, we call them the maps that you see in the senior magazine, but then they are blown up all over the hallway posters at our school. Another way we use infographics, here is a web article on our website, and then a small infographic to go with an article. So if you have written an article already, you could pitch an idea for an infographic to go with something you've already written, or something that you think, again, would go along with a story that would be of interest to our readers, this one having to do with the stock market. Here's why would a student want to take an independent study, AP Lang versus AP Seminar, what are the similarities and the differences, because that's a big question for sophomores wanting to take those classes. And then this is an infographic about making an infographic, right? So you can basically make an infographic about anything. Here's a timeline infographic from the yearbook of kind of progression through COVID lockdown that we used in our yearbook. Here's another. We used this as an inspiration, and then we made it into our own to fit our own design. These are places that we would place photos for the yearbook. These are also things that we did for our COVID yearbook. Students share their favorite quarantine TV shows. So you would ask students what they were watching during a certain period of time. I know a lot of times we do like albums, what students are listening to right now. So you really need to think about a couple of ideas of what you would want to pitch, and then think about your design skills at this stage, where you might want to design it. I would say most students now use Canva, but there used to be a great site that a lot of people used, which was Easily. Really advanced designers can just use Illustrator or Photoshop or something. If you know an app that you really like and are comfortable with, feel free. We've also had students just open up a blank Google slide, and you can actually customize the size of a Google slide. So you just go to File, Page Setup, you click the custom button, and you can make it any size you want. And then you're kind of just starting with a blank slide, but you could also do that in Canva as well. So these are some past tools that students have used. I would say now Canva is probably the most popular. So choose a topic or two. Find a couple model designs, even if they're in this slideshow here, or, you can do a search of infographics and then pitch them to me, and we'll get you going and talk you through the design. So look forward to seeing those. Good luck with your assignment.